everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is another episode of Impact Thursday with Constance. Please stay tuned and enjoy. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And lastly, click on that notification bell to get more videos.
Welcome to another episode of Impact Thursday with Constance. My name is Constance and today I'm not alone. I'm with Eurasius Mudiani, who's working as a network engineer. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure and honor to have you here with us. In today's topic, we'll be speaking about the drug abuse. Last week's topic, we were speaking about the drug abuse, and we're going to continue to speak about it now from a testimony point of view, where Eurasius will be sharing his story. He once used drugs and was able to overcome them and managed to pursue his studies, finished, and he's now working. So this episode is here to give an encouragement to a young person out there who's using drugs, to say to them it is still possible for them to overcome the use of drugs, to stop using drugs and focus on their studies and finish their studies and eventually work. And for someone who doesn't know anything about drugs, this is your opportunity to learn what drugs can do to a person and the dangers of drugs overall. Because the reason why we are dwelling so much on this topic, according to the statistics that I've read, it shows that about 80% of male youth in South Africa, the deaths that are there are caused by the drug abuse and also the alcohol consumption. So this is a big problem that we need to be aware as South Africans, that the rate of drug abuse is growing, especially among young people, and it's very important to make them aware of the dangers of drugs so that they are encouraged to actually leave drugs and focus on their studies. Very, very important. So I'll start speaking to you, Eurasius. When did you start using drugs?
Okay, so my first time actually using drugs was when I was about 12 and a half. It wasn't like I just shot right into it, but it was my first taste of what is classified as a drug in South Africa.
All right. And how did that come about? How did you start?
So for me, it was actually coming from a place of boredom, which is actually the reason for most people, where most people begin. I was at a family, a New Year's Eve party, and it was just us cousins, sitting there. My grandmother, I believe, was either asleep or away, and we were just there. We had the house to ourselves, and we had music, we had speakers and everything. We had fun the way we normally do, but for some reason, the things that we always used to do in the holidays as cousins, this time wasn't interesting enough. It wasn't, keeping us, active enough, or keeping our attention or our intrigue enough, And at some point, it wasn't necessarily something at this point that was started by someone else who said, let's try this. But I'm the one who actually, just went, and because by that age, I'd already smelled what a cigarette smells like before it's burnt. So to me, and this is what I still think today, even though it's not clinically true, is that a cigarette, when it's not burnt, smells like a tea bag. So this is what I thought at the time, and so I went and fished, I think rooibos tea or some tea, and I tried to roll it together with newspaper. And I remember one of my cousins who was actually good at rolling. I think he had already been maybe smoking one thing or another. He helped me to roll it, and before we know it, someone else in the family now already actually had weed on them, and they rolled it, and we smoked it, as a matter of fact. And at the time, I didn't even know that it was weed, but I felt the effect that it had on me. I felt that I was different. Now we were all laughing, now we're all having fun, as it seemed to be. And within months, maybe a bit of a longer time since that event, I started now encountering more and more of that, just from peers around me. And now it was maybe because I was someone who liked to have friends who were older than me, to feel maybe more that I'm cooler than those my peers who are around me. I found myself now in the midst of people who do this every day. So by the time I entered into high school, now when I was in primary school, maybe grade 7 or so, I didn't ever do it at school because I didn't have anyone at school who knew how to do that. It was maybe on holiday times when I'm with my older friends. But when I came to high school, that's when I actually started doing it almost every day, because now I was in the midst of people who do it every day. And before I knew it, now I was a junkie. Yes.
So yeah, you spoke about you got to a point where you were like doing it every day. What kind of drug were you smoking?
So for me, actually, it was weed, marijuana. They call it clinically, I believe they call it marijuana. Around in the movies, we call it weed. It has many names, but it's just basically that, marijuana. That was the main thing. After a while of doing that, we started smoking cigarettes as well, because we felt that after having weed or having a joint of weed, we want to have a cigarette that will kind of cool us down or something like that. There are many theories as to why one would do something this way or that way. All of them really not really based upon any real truth, but just upon preference. Some people like to smoke their weed this way, others like to smoke their weed that way. But that was the principal thing for me that really hooked me, was weed, and that's something that stuck with me for a very long time.
Alright, you spoke about it's something that stuck with you for a long time, a very long time. Can you share with us how long did you continue with smoking or taking drugs, if there was any other different one?
For me, I said before that I started around 12 and a half, and by the time I was 14, that's in high school when I started doing it all the time. And that continued basically throughout high school, all the way into varsity. I mean, there was only maybe a 6-month period or so, maybe in grade 11, when I wasn't smoking weed or cigarettes, which was a period for me where I called it almost like a trial period for me, because I wanted to test out what life would be like without weed, without cigarettes, what life would be like if I actually focused on my studies and tried to make the most of myself. And I actually saw a great, remarkable, marks that I've never seen before, but I guess that's how habits are, is that they kind of haunt you. And before I knew it, by the second semester, I was back smoking weed and everything. I mean, my marks didn't go down too drastically, because maybe I'm a bit of an intellectual, but I really feel like I didn't reach the goals that I had, the critical marks that I had to make in order to make it into the course that I wanted to study in varsity.
All right. So, throughout, what effects of taking drugs have you experienced personally? It can either be side effects or just effects in your attitude or conduct, how you carry yourself. How did that affect you? How did they affect your behavior? You already spoke something about studies as well. How they? I think you can just expand from there.
All right. So there's different kinds of drugs, because they have chemically they're different. They will have different side effects. But how I would define or categorize drugs from my experience is that even others would use a similar kind of categorization, is that they are uppers and they are downers. So there are uppers that make you feel hyperactive, that make you more energetic and able to last days without sleeping, and there are those are the uppers. Those are the ones that people like to do when they're partying. And there was a bit of that when I was in matric, in grade 12 for those watching, where I was now not just smoking weed, which is what I would call a downer, but now when I was also even sniffing cat, which is a variant of cocaine, which is more of an upper. It keeps you awake for longer. You can once you do that, even when you're drunk, you're no longer drunk anymore. You're able to actually drink a lot without even feeling it. So it's kind of counteracting the drinking. But like I said, my principal hooked drug that really hooked me from a young age was weed. And for me, the first experience that I had of weed was of something that really just took me away, took me away from where I was. I could be in a place but see things differently, not hallucinate, not necessarily see different colors, but I saw everything, when I was first starting to take it. It seemed like everything was beautiful, it seemed like everything was just glistening, everything, whether it's a sight, whether it's women, whether it's, cars, whether it's anything, like everything felt like a movie, and for that matter of fact is why I wanted to take it more and more, is why every time it was presented to me, it wasn't presented to me where I feel like I'm being subdued or where I feel like it's something that I'm weak towards. This when we're beginning to smoke weed or smoke cigarettes, we're not feeling as though we are being conquered, but we're feeling as though we're being invited, like we're being invited to something nice. And that's the kind of feelings that weed gives you. It makes you feel as though you're in a movie. It makes you feel everything becomes a bit heightened. If I crack a joke that's not so funny, you'll find it as the funniest joke that you've ever heard. And for that matter of fact, is why most people like taking weed, why most people like drinking, is because it makes people more easily joyous, easily happy. And that's the kind of drug that weed is. Now there are other kinds of drugs like nyaope, which is kind of an opium kind of drug. Heroin, not so popular maybe in South Africa, but nyaope definitely, which is that kind of a really downer kind of drug that really makes people somber. I've never taken that one, because for us, like when we were taking weed, we kind of had boundaries to say, no, I'll never go that far, or I'll never go, I'll never do this, But others who were maybe more liberal with their drugs were able to, test this, test that, test everything. I had a friend who was, he was basically into everything, I mean, I wasn't always with it. I wasn't with him in the parties because of the kind of lifestyle he lived. But he was always telling us about this new ecstasy that he tried, and all these kinds of things that are taken in different ways. Maybe some are not smoked, some are like eye drops, and there's so many different kinds of drugs out there. And this guy was trying everything. And for me, I was kind of happy to say that I don't want to necessarily go there. But by the time I got to grade 12, for me to get to a point where now I was ready to take something like cocaine was, out of, again, like how I started with weed, from a place of boredom, from a place of feeling like this thing that I've been doing for so long, that has entertained me for so long, is now no longer enough. And now I want to take the next step. And this was, maybe 5 or 6 years of taking weed. Is now that I was feeling like, weed is making me slow, weed is bringing my marks down. As I spoke to you, is that when I went off of weed, I noticed how my marks went up. And so that was basically it for me.
Alright. So from your experience, what can you say are some of the reasons for young people, majority of young people, to have an interest in taking drugs? You had your own reason, but then looking at some of your peers back then, what were the common reasons why they would want to?
I think what makes people want to take drugs or even drinking or just to dive into that kind of a lifestyle is boredom. boredom is emptiness. You know, boredom is a kind of emptiness on its own. Some people have an emptiness of depression. You know, some people have an emptiness of lack of love. You know, some people have. Well, my emptiness was boredom. You know, because I felt like what I had was not entertaining enough. You know? And I think that's the principal reason why people would want to try that, is because we're trying to fill a hole. We're trying to fill a space that, you know, has been left open, and we feel like, you know, maybe if I tried this will be different. You know, it's when you're at a place where you feel like you can't lose anything, you're willing to take anything. You know, people who maybe have a mission in their life, or people who already know what they want and already have, you know, a goal and are driven, they're not easily taken out, because they have something that they can lose. They know that if I do this, I'll lose my studies, or I'll lose my dreams, you know. But those of us who, we didn't know that, you know, I didn't know when I was starting to take out weed that actually I'm good at academics, because all my life in primary school I was just getting good enough marks in English and in math. You know, it didn't dawn on me that I'm intelligent. I didn't think that. You know, I thought that, you know, if I'm not going to make it as a soccer player or as an actor, which were the things that were popular, you know, I thought that, you know, then I'm not really, there's nothing really much out there. And it took, you know, advice from, you know, my older brother telling me that actually you're smart, actually you can do this, actually if you study hard you'll do well, you know. And I was hearing many other comments from peers, from teachers who were seeing me that, you know, I'm in the wrong influence, but, you know, there's a lot of potential. And, you know, for a longest of time there was a lot of ignorance on my part, and I think that's one thing that really, you know, allows people to just give themselves to that, is ignorance. Is you hear that there's potential, you hear even that there's warnings to say, no, stay away from this, you know, it's going to kill you, and all of that, but there's an ignorance of saying that I'm going to do it anyway. There's an ignorance of saying that, you know what, I don't care, you know. And I believe that, you know, an awakening is what really will help people, because that ignorance is it's not even good.
We have come to the end of the first part of this episode, and if you have any questions, may you please leave them down below in the comment section, and our guest is going to make sure that he answers each one of them. And please remember to like, share, comment, and share this video with your friends, your families, your colleagues, and everyone else. Let's spread the information that is going to help many other people out there. And lastly, remember to subscribe if you have not yet done so, and click on that notification bell to ensure that you get updates when we post more videos. From me, Constance, I love you all so much.